If Grandpa hadn't hit him, then none of you would have been born.
Yeah, well, still don't understand what Dad was doing in the middle of the street.
What was it, George? Bird watching?
What, Lorraine? What?
Anyway, your grandpa hit him with the car and brought him into the house. He seemed so helpless. Like a little lost puppy. And my heart just went out to him.
Yeah, Mom, we know. You've told us this story a million times. You felt sorry for him, so you decided to go with him to the fish under the sea dance.
No, it was the enchantment under the sea dance. Our first date. I'll never forget it. It was the night of that terrible thunderstorm. Remember, George? Your father kissed me for the very first time on that dance floor. And it was then that I realized that I was going to spend the rest of my life with him.
A long, long time ago. Actually, it was only 4 years ago. That year, 2021. I thought of a podcast idea. It was so much fun that first year that I figured I would do it again. The next 2 years I did the sequels. Compared to the first, there are no equals. The fourth year, as you all know, was that silly cartoon show. And when March 31st arrived, I wouldn't say I almost cried, but I thought it best to decide to say my last goodbye. But I lied about Marchy McFly, said that last year was the last year and that the show had died. But I found a way to keep the podcast alive, and I'm gonna call it Marchy McFive. I'm gonna call it Marchy McFive. Yeah, I lied about Marchy McFly, said that last year was the last year and that the show had died. But I found a way to keep that podcast alive, and I welcome you to Marchy McFive.
It's day 5. Day 5 of year 5. It is day 5 of Marchy McFly. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy March 5th, day 5 of year 5 of Marchy McFive. Marchy McFly. How are the Marchy McFans doing? I literally just came up with that in a previous recording about 10 seconds ago when I like froze for a second and then there was a long pause. So I thought, you know what, Mike, let's re-record that beginning. Even though I just hit the table, I'm not going to re-record again, my friends. It's Marchy McFive, day 5, and I am coming to you before work. I thought, you know what, Mike, let's get the Marchy McFans a special treat by getting the show up early today. Plus the fact that tonight I'm recording another show, another podcast with my friends Chris and Dave for our Fine Movies, Fine Spirits podcast. I thought, you know what, Michael? You don't want to stay up all night. You want to record that podcast and then very quickly go watch Survivor. So I'm telling you, those are my priorities, and that's why I'm bringing you Marchy McFly early in the morning. Today, this episode, this clip that I'm watching here is minutes 1420 to 1755. So we're almost into 20 minutes into a movie. But really the moment that things are going to start to shift are 30 minutes. I've talked about this in the past, but I took a screenwriting course in college, and the teacher talked about structure and like 3-act structure for a 90-minute movie is half hour, and then the ending. and you realize a plot point happens around the half-hour mark. And it's not always the case, but I do notice it when it does happen in certain movies. It's like, oh, we're at the half-hour mark, start for something, time for something to happen. And we're not quite there yet, but I think of this segment as kind of the last setup, the last kind of, okay, here's all the stuff going on in his normal world. Now let's go cuckoo bananas. I guess technically, things take off once he hits 88 miles per hour, but I tend to think that the whole mall sequence, which is going to be happening, over the next couple days, is really when the movie is like, okay, here we go. This is the movie you're here to see. Everything else was like, here's Marty, here's his life, here's his parents, here's his girlfriend, here's his dream, here's his principal, here's his plutonium, and the rest now is just kind of ready to take off and bring you back to the future. But this minute still is important because we get more setup. The big thing I noticed in this minute is how George, Marty's dad, and then we meet Marty's mom, Lorraine, they're just seemingly going through the motions, and the kids don't really care. It's not like they don't notice it. They don't care because it's their life, but I'm seeing it. So it picks up with, Marty upset about the car and how much the car meant to him. And George is like, I know, you're right. And all I can say is, I'm sorry. And then the very next scene, we get a shot that isn't explained. The very next scene, we go to the dinner table, and, George is saying how he, you're better off not going or not playing at that dance because, you don't want headaches. And his brother's like, the last thing you need is headaches. But he's pouring a giant bowl of peanut brittle. And it's funny in the way of like, why is this guy eating peanut brittle at dinner? And he offers some to Marty, and Marty looks like, no, thank you. But in the actual original kind of context of the peanut brittle, there was more to it.
Did it ever occur to you to say no? I mean, just once, say no. Look, son, I know it's hard for you to understand, but the fact is, I'm not a fighter. Try it once, okay? For me. Just say no. N-O, no.
Hey, McFly, my kid here is selling peanut brittle for a team. It's $5 a box. I put you down for a case, okay?
Okay.
Great. It's out in the car. I'll go get it. See, honey, I told you, we'd only have to go to one house.
So that is a little deleted scene showing that a neighbor, showing that George is really a pushover and will kind of just do anything that people tell him to do because he's just not very good at confrontations. And I did a whole episode on deleted scenes back in the original year, but I thought it would be fun if I could find deleted scenes that fit into the moments that I'm talking about day to day. And I just decided that maybe about 3 minutes ago. So maybe going forward, I'll do that. But I wanted to point out the peanut brittle moment. It turns out that the reason they're having peanut brittle at dinner is because George couldn't say no to a neighbor and bought an entire case of peanut brittle from a pushy, jerk-face, another bully neighbor. I mean, he bought the whole case. See, I told you we only going to go to one house. So we see George pouring the peanut brittle. Marty's not into it. George is like, you're better off not worrying about the dance. It's like, think about that. You're better off not doing what you loved because it could have gone bad. You could have gotten a headache. And the last thing you need is headaches. We meet Lorraine for the first time. The first shot we see is her, pouring down a glass of, I'm not going to call it water because we do see a bottle later. So we see, she's a little older. She's a little puffy in the face. But, when Marty in the future, and I'm going to say, you're so thin, I'll say it. But I never thought of Lorraine as like, heavy ever. It never occurred to me. But I do know they caked on, they added puffiness to her face. They added bags under her eyes. this makeup, it's not the greatest. No old man makeup is the greatest, but in the way what I talk about with Strickland, like around the neck. George, it's a little easier. The glasses, I think, help a lot, and the greased back hair, and just a little subtle things. With Lorraine, I think it's the most prosthetics, I'm guessing. She made a cake. She actually either made a cake or bought a cake, but based on the pan, she made a cake, so she's a good baker. I don't see anything about, I don't see cakes. I see boxed potatoes. I see more peanut brittle on the counter. And they're a big soda drinking family. They love Diet Pepsi. Diet Pepsi's all over the place. Pepsi, we'll see a can of Pepsi Free later, which leads to maybe the one joke that doesn't age because it's like very specific to a time. So the cake's welcome home, Uncle Joey, old jailbird Joey, a bird coming out of prison. It looks like they're going to have the cake without him. And we meet his sister. She's like, I think it's very embarrassing having a uncle in jail. And the brother's like, it's your brother. Like, nobody wants to, or they're just embarrassed that that they have an uncle in jail. And I'm not sure I noticed this before, but Lorraine says we all make mistakes in life, and she just kind of glares at George as she said that. So Dave McFly, the big brother David, is off for his big job at Burger King. So he's an older brother. He's like, I have to catch the bus. He takes the bus to work at Burger King, still lives at home. I don't know how much older he's supposed to be, but at the end, look, I'll just say it. He seems to work in an office, dress a suit, but he still seems to work from home. So I don't know what's going on there. But he leaves. He kisses his dad on the head. Better change that oil. Like, he's very playful. They're all a little more confident than George, I do notice. They maybe they take after Lorraine, or how Lorraine was, before decades of being married to George. So as Dave leaves, Marty's sister says, that Jennifer Parker called them not your answering service. And that allows Lorraine to go off on a tangent of, I don't like girls calling boys, or, sitting in parked cars with boys, and little things like, I would never do something like that when I was your age. Setting things up. And the sister's like, well, how am I supposed to meet anybody? She's like, it'll happen just like I met your father. She's like, that's so stupid. Grandpa hit him with a car. What were you doing out there, George? It was meant to be. You guys, she's like, none of you would have been born if that didn't happen. All these little things, just setting up for them to knock it down to 55. What were you doing out there? Bird watching. And George, he's like, what, Lorraine, what? And there's moments there. And then she talks about, like, it was, whatever happened. I took him, he looked like a sad little puppy dog. I took him to the dance. He kissed me on the floor that night. And that was when I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life with him. So picture the George back then. He still had enough guts to kiss Lorraine, who I would assume is one of the prettiest girls at school. So there was something there with George that maybe just time or just fear kind of sucked out of him. He was trying to be a writer then, and he did kiss Lorraine. But while she's telling the story, he just kind of looks down. And it's almost like he's probably embarrassed of what he was actually doing out there. And he's just like, he also looks like life has beaten him down. They both give these little looks of just like how life has broken them both down. And she's like, I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life with him. And she looks at him, and he just starts laughing at the TV again, not even paying attention. So we cut away from the family. We don't see them in this looking like this ever again. That is it. That one moment, that one scene where you saw the whole McFly family around the dinner table is the last time you will see any McFly like that in the history of Hill Valley. It is now 12:27 a.m. So what was it, 1:15? Marty, Doc wants him to meet. A classic Panasonic clock radio that, my brother and I grew up on clock radios. We would listen to radio all night falling asleep. And then eventually we got clock radios with cassette tapes in. So we would listen to comedy albums, Falling Asleep, Sam Kinison, Andrew Dice Clay, Eddie Murphy, and of course, Dr. William H. Cosby. But we did back then. We didn't know. So it's 12:28 a.m. or it turns 12:28, and that's when we see a Pepsi Free. Again, that Pepsi Free can. Pepsi Free was a type of Diet Pepsi back in the 80s, and again, it works as a joke. We'll get to it later, but that is, at least it sets it up here like, there's something called Pepsi Free. But I wonder a kid nowadays would even, they definitely wouldn't get that joke because they wouldn't be paying attention. Maybe they'd see the can, maybe. But I like Marty's bed, how it has like the shelves built in. He has books, so he likes to read. But he fell asleep fully dressed, and the phone rings, and I do like that his guitar is in bed with him. I would fall asleep. See, my bed wasn't big enough to have a guitar next to me, but I would fall asleep or lie down on my bed and just play my acoustic guitar for hours at a time. Very funny how Michael J. Fox is sleeping, just the awkwardness. The phone rings. He picks it up. Hopefully it's his own line because he didn't wake up the family. So he picks it up. He's like, Marty, Doc. He said, you didn't fall asleep, did you? He's like, no, I'm fine. He goes, great. This is very important. And then it gets cut off. And that's the end of this segment. One thing I do notice in the background, we see a Huey Lewis poster. So think about it, okay? There's a Huey Lewis poster in the back of Marty's wall. There's a Huey Lewis and the News poster. So Huey Lewis and the News exists, okay? That means you could say that The Power of Love exists as a song, maybe? Or is it just a song for the movie and a song that the Pinheads wrote on their own? Okay, this is kind of throwing me for a loop because at the same time that Huey Lewis and the News is a friggin' band, Huey Lewis himself is the judge at the Battle of the Bands during the auditions, which, by the way, I completely forgot to mention the other judges. They weren't well known. Like one of the older guys, he had a familiar face, like a character actor I've seen in things. None of that. I couldn't find anything on the woman, and they played bit parts in things over the years, but I forgot about it and I wanted to mention it. But Huey Lewis played the main judge who had the line, I'm afraid you just chewed on a line. So that man exists in the same world where Huey Lewis exists because the poster is on the gosh damn wall. On the gosh damn wall. Why am I thinking mall? I'm already thinking about tomorrow. No. Today is wall day. Tomorrow is mall day. And that's it. I think some of these episodes will be, shorter. I'm sure some of them will, I've gone half hour here. I've gone 40 minutes, I think. But I'm guessing a lot of the times we'll be closer to the 20-minute range. And I'm going to get to the 20-minute range by continuing to talk to you. So right now you're like, wait a minute, Mike, you're only at 18 minutes and 40 seconds. But if I keep talking, we'll hit that 20-minute mark. And we'll get to the point where we will reach the 20-minute mark because, of course, we get to the theme song at the end. So with that being said, it is now 8:18 a.m., I have 12 minutes to kind of collect my thoughts and get to work. So maybe the show won't go up till later. Maybe I'll put it up at lunch. Maybe I'll get it up right away. But I'm glad that I recorded it early today. I'm glad that I can now focus on work for the day. Look at that. Now it's 19 minutes and 17 seconds. We did it. So you can find me on all the socials at Geek Mentality. I feel like my throat is a little scratchy. Maybe that's morning coffee throat. So it's Geek Mentality everywhere except TikTok, which is Geek Mentality Mike. The YouTube channel is Fans Not Experts. That's because the website is fansnotexperts.com. So that is it. I am done. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. And until tomorrow, you know what? We're at 1950 right now. So if I just wait a few more seconds, I can make sure right at the 20 mark that we all say it together. Here is my theme song!
This is my podcast, I made it. Geek Mentality's what I named it. And I think you should listen and subscribe. 'Cause I'm kinda funny and awesome. I think that I'm worth your time, and I'm kinda handsome. My mom says, please listen and please subscribe. At least listen to this episode.
Fans not experts.